Xerxes.
Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Targaryens.
Recent Targaryens. Recent Targaryens.
Join us on another exciting adventure of Xerxes.
Did I show you the Gorgon Wall?
No, show it off. Wait, you referenced it, but we didn't get to talk about it.
Oh, well, there you go. That's your Gorgon Wall. And this is just stuff you can fish right off of Wikipedia if you start looking for it. That's number 2. These aren't star forts, by the way. That's why I marked them out with squares, but
Just separate readouts in a line?
yeah, just at a certain point
Pushing
the wall
it.
starts appearing.
Nobody's
like,
even
this is
pushing
the
this.
wall. You can follow that all the way. Like here makes a king. Number 5 follows the wall. The funny thing, what I found interesting, is this just goes on and on and on until you reach number 33, but it's somewhere here. No,
Of course, that's where it would stop.
5,
Number 33.
8. This is 8 meter. Yeah, this from here on in, it starts being below sea level. Like this one is 23 meters below sea level.
And what have they built on top of all these? Nothing?
No, absolutely nothing. It's all just these types of things. You see a wall remains and a bit of a square,
Yeah.
and that's really all you're getting. But you can definitely follow like the wall, even from above.
So
And it's
Nathan,
probably another wall to keep the Tartars out.
Maybe what's above and below this directly?
Well, above it, you got
Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan. So Tartary,
Yeah,
basically.
that's wild. And consulting older maps, have you had the chance to take a look at where water may have been?
Well, if you look at the old maps from that time, you can definitely see this. The Black Sea is there, even the Crimea.
Uh-huh.
That's all there. But the Caspian Sea looks to be more here. Like
That
this,
could make some sense if that's a coastal wall.
or this area, like here.
Uh-huh.
See if I can
It does look like
bring up.
floodland.
like, but cool shirt. I like your.
You're wearing the same shirt.
Yeah, great minds.
Similar rock.
Let me look at this paper you're showing me right now.
I'm wondering if is that backwards for you or not?
No, I see it. Comets or volcanoes. Scientists are changing their mind about the Earth's water, how Earth's water got here.
So this is one just on. So they had to explain away how water got here because they're like, shoot, people, whatever. So now they're saying it's volcanoes, but they're not minimizing comets. And there's a lot of, I had some Russian articles on like comets and volcano material composites, and then what was it? Earthquakes and volcanism. And so earthquakes are all linked to volcanoes, essentially. And the reason that happens is if you study a volcano, which they're doing, they're studying like individual volcanoes. And there's so many things happening in the life cell of this volcano at different points. Like I have like a 60-page, I don't know if this is the one. Yeah, so here's this. I don't know if I could keep showing these, but these geosystems look at that title. So you're studying what? Geochemistry, geophysics, the geosystems. And this goes into, it goes into basically seismography.
Can you read that headline? Sorry, I couldn't.
It was 30 years of life in an active submarine volcano, a time-lapse bathymetry. How do you even say that? Bathymetry, but this is bathymetry. Study of the Kikum-Jenny volcano, Lesser Antilles. So what this does is it goes into explaining what they thought were earthquake-like seismographic measurements that are actually lined up with the study of this volcano's seismography. And so they're explaining that volcanoes are causing earthquakes. So when the heat, water's, whatever, everything's heating, things are taking place. You have vapors of water and all these other things from the heating magma, and it makes a lot of shaking and quaking. And so when the actual eruption happens, that's when you're going to get like your higher level earthquakes, which they say at the end of this article. It's like they're confirming that it is our determination that the earthquake seismography is later than the volcanic seismography, and they're saying it was responsible for. And so they're starting to have all these articles of what I had considered was possibly happening, because I think the narrative on earthquakes is shifts in tectonic plates, and
the narrative about earthquakes
heliocentric and things like that. And so even plate tectonics I got into, and that could be years of studying, but with the volcanoes being set up on the different our plates, and if you're thinking about Mercury again as part of that swelling and heating and all those different things, in one of your videos you're talking about mercury coils and stuff, thinking about all that, it explains what's happening with the plates. And so it's like volcanic plate tectonics, or you need to look at it as like, again, that whole layer that's happening underneath. And then all the different layers that we have are these lava tubes. And I have a bunch of links to just show on lava tubes, because that's fascinating. And some of the lava tubes look like they had the train systems built in them, but they were lava tubes originally. And you can see like a track in there, and they're linked to like the lava tube sites. And so it's like, what is going on? And if you imagine that, then it would be on the seafloor and layers below that of these lava tubes. The last one I found, it looks like fractals, like total, each volcano and their furnace or whatever magma chamber comes out, and it just looks like it's the vessels coming out. And it's really, really connected. And I think the only way any of this would make sense, or I was interested, is because of studying star forts and the tech that, Victor and Mike and everyone was sharing, people that were jumping in, sharing all these images and then looking into that, and then how these forts were kind of in the water and on top of something, and then they're decimated. And I was like, that looks like it was on a hydrothermal vent that was either eruptive or whatever. And then all the maps, I have a bunch of old maps in here, and I'm like, well, what is this marking? What are they trying to label here? And if you're traveling, you need to know where these submarine volcanoes are. So maps from the 1500s may have these labeled on their own little cable array because they know when someone went over there, they got vaporized, or it's like you get heated up and damaged ships and whatever else. But then you look into, once we get into submarine volcanoes, which really got me interested in volcanoes, because we have like all these anomalies, the Bermuda Triangle. Well, if you look at the Bermuda Triangle and you look at the submarine volcano activity right around it, it's causing some crazy currents. And if we're looking at the tides, we have some literature on the tides being caused by the heartbeat of the ocean, which is constantly producing a sound. They do sonar on these volcanoes, and they can detect lots from that. It's just incredible. So the different frequencies, they can tell like what volcano that is. And if you're if you're a marine animal, you need to know, I don't even know how to classify, but if you're of the water, you would need to know where these things are. Like otherwise you're going to get zapped, or you need to be like a shark that's evolved that has major scales, like a dragon shark. That's not what they're called, but I call them dragon sharks. Then, I mean, there's just so many connections, because you get like when you get animals washed up, or animals like dolphins, we'll say, birds even, washed up on shore. Well, if you have steam shooting out and there's, that can kill aerial things. And it does kill things in the ocean, and then that's now an anomaly. People are mad. What happened? Was there an oil spill? Or no, it's a natural phenomena that is just part of the nature and the cycle of the ocean, and don't get bent out of shape, but they won't even explain that to these people. When you can find it in like if you looked at the Smithsonian or the Woods Hole, or they're different, there's hundreds of ocean, I think, volcano observatories. They're saying a subdermal or submarine volcano went off and it killed animals, and they know that, but nobody will report that. And that gets into like the raining frogs and on land, and because that happens too. And so there's just a lot of directions that
you just busted open like a huge can of frogs flying right from the sky. Well, wait. Let me just. I feel like I don't want to like cut you off because you're going super deep, but I want people to know. Yeah, we have to back up for a second. Okay, let's start for a second. First off, around the Foundry and Tartary Nova, we call you Books, right? So you're the smart one. We love you. No, you have books. You have books, but you've read them and you know a lot of stuff. So it's actually interesting how good you are at finding stuff, because you're like, I feel the same way sometimes, where I'm like, oh man, I found something that's just right out in the open, but no one's bothered to read, no one's bothered to think about. But like, what led you? Like, how much are you willing to tell about like what led you to this path? Like, how long have you been studying this stuff? Who are you?
Who am I? So I think I can skip over. It was a rough time, and I was watching the very beginning. How I found Exodus was just hearing about mud flood, and I didn't hear about it. I missed the end of the video, and it was like my husband said, "Did you hear that stuff about the mud flood?" I was like, "What do you mean?" So I went back. I was like, "Mud flood reset. What is this?" And then you were like the next person to report on the topic, and then you had said something about Gestalt, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, Gestalt," because that's a big one for me, and it caused me to go on and just craziness, but to redesign education. And I shared, I think, my 80-point slideshow with you. So anyway, so I was just
because you're a teacher, you're
psychology.
You're a teacher already. You know stuff.
Well, yes. We'll keep it at that. So got watching the Exorcist channel, and it was like, okay, this is something I can grab onto now. I don't need to watch like the other. There was no truth that was interesting. It was just current events that were like fake that you'd hear about and be like, oh gosh, that stuff I don't have interest in. So I was gonna start reading books or whatever, or like find new meaning. And that's kind of where Tartary came in, and recent Tartarians, and everyone started talking about mud flood and reset, and everyone's questioning this mud flood and this reset and what happened. Did someone destroy us? Did we get hit by comets? And so that's what led to studying volcanoes. And there's another video, I think it was Observation Deck, and I didn't finish it because he said something about volcanoes in the ocean, and it reminded me of when I was studying Woods Hole hydrothermal vents, and I was like, what, there's an ocean volcano? Like, I thought there was one, and this is like 2 years ago. And I was like, that's crazy that there's a volcano in the ocean. And that's all I thought, because if you go to their hydrothermal vents, this is like the volcano that they're studying, and they're getting all the stuff from it. And then she had said something about the enzymes on the that they were taking and using were like replicating the DNA of humans, and I was like, what? So I heard the first time, and I put it aside. Came back to that again. We'll maybe talk about that later in the show. But then it was like I found out there was over 1 million of these volcanoes in the ocean.
1 million volcanoes.
Like, over, and they are 80% of what our active volcanoes are right now, I think is what they estimate. And there's tons that are unnamed. So if you wanted to go and research and find a submarine volcano, you get to name it. You could have an exorcist volcano.
Oh.
Did you know that? Yeah. We talked about naming, since there's like 1 degree of separation from volcanoes to like everything, we thought maybe naming a volcano Kevin Bacon would be like the trump card to the Kevin Bacon game. Anyway, that came up in the radio chat, which was really funny. Thanks to Lee. So anyway, it was that fact that nobody knew that, and it was like, people should probably know that, because then what does that mean? You know, what is that causing? What is that causing? Tides? I started thinking about the Bermuda Triangle right away. I'm like, this is like causing currents if they're constantly, sending off different type of gases and pressures, and eruptions do different things to the atmosphere. So anyway, that was that. But when I back it up again, you got the Discord going. So we had a Foundry, we had a place. I posted like 80 gigabytes of files that are still up on the Foundry that we'll go through. We'll do a show where we can kind of scan through those. But that kind of everything got put on hold when it was like, we need to talk about volcanoes, because everybody's wondering what everyone's wondering what that is. So there's Discord, which is incredible. And if we're going to talk about it, it's like, it's a social network, but it's for woke people and different levels. And it doesn't matter what your view is of Earth. We have like round, large, little, flat, skull. I mean, you can all talk and respect each other and get other ideas and bounce them back and forth. And you can go into a radio chat and feel comfortable saying like something that you could not say to anybody else about, I don't know, anything. So that was helpful. But then these networks where we have our pages, and now I have now all of a sudden I have 20 people helping research, or Nathan and I have 20 people helping us research volcanoes, or 500, 600, whoever's on that page or interested and comes across it in their research, which is like, we're looking into ancient, history, and they're finding stuff, and then they're finding the, biblical things, and it's just coming together was great. And then being able to do like a female chat, which we did, because some people wanted to, are more comfortable. And that is where I probably got, my most resolve. It was in that one conversation that put like all the things that I had been kind of thinking and together with Naya's had some 20 years of research on something, and was just reading it like it was, and it dropped me, because I was like, this is what I thought I had to do. Like, I thought I had to do what she already has. And it was like plaguing me, because I was like, gosh, I'm gonna have to go through every single biblical event and get the timeline and get the volcano and get the sky anomalies and get this and this. And it's like, that was stressing me out. And so we had that conversation, and I was like, oh, and that like changed my life. And that was probably, I think, 3 days ago, because then every night since that 3 nights ago, there's been 2 conversations now that have taken place throughout the evening, not even on volcanoes. So it was just more of like catharsis to talk to people who are kind, and it's like it's really a neat thing. So I hope, if anything, people understand that this Discord isn't just for a gaming, what it started out to be, with just a gaming network, and people are using it for incredible networking. And we're pushing away from it just being entertainment. I think a lot of people, this video technically, but also entertainment too.
Yeah, this video, right? this video is entertainment. You know, this is a culmination of all this research that you're doing. That's fun to do and hard work to do. But some people, you know, they might forget, like, there's a lot of work that goes into this. And you spent a lot of time on this, and I think a lot of other people did too.
Yeah. Well, and Nathan, and he should be here, and he will, if he gets to be able to.
Well, this will be the first video of a lot about magma. I think we're actually gonna have to do a whole thing about volcanoes, but I just wanted to not. I felt like there wasn't precedent to do anything until we talked about this with you, because you have brought so much of this forward that I would have just been, A, it would have been wrong, but B, it wouldn't have been correct. There would have been things missing, and so there's so much stuff that we just would miss that it wasn't worth it to try to start it without, you know, and the way you go around things, I think people will say, wow, the way she knows all the holistic parts of this, it sounds like Andreas' video, you know, the way I go into all the places. That's what you're doing. You're covering so many things. You're like, look, everything's related. Volcanoes, mining, the Bible, and everything. It's like, yeah, this is exactly the truth. This is history. This is the future. This is science.
Science.
Basic science, hidden in plain sight.
And we don't need to. I don't need to read, you know, von Reichenbach's Vital Forces of Science. I'll understand it much better now that I'm understanding the science of volcanoes, I think. But coming at this from, like, say, a parent standpoint is, throughout this journey of the 3 years of the truth, it's like, okay, you got polar shift, grand solar minimum, you got Nibiru, you got comets, you got sky anomalies coming at you, and you have children, and you're like, okay, you can't get totally taken into being scared of anything, but you want to know what's realistic, what's trackable, what you can do to help, if you can, and to help others. And so volcanoes are the last thing in my life I ever imagined researching. I mean, but honestly, since then, I've gone, like, mushroom hunting, I'm agate hunting. I, like, went and stared at a tree, like, just the bottom of a tree, and I was, like, staring at it for, like, 20 minutes because I hadn't ever taken the time to do that. And it was like new eyes in nature. And I already had, you know, more appreciation on this truth journey. But that's one thing I think volcanoes have done for me. And I've also had just relief because I'm not stressed about the unknown. And I'm sure there's still plenty of things that we don't know. It's like, I can track this, but it can consume you. So it's like, right now there's a lot of volcanic activity, and, you know, there's, like, safe homes, safe ways to build. And it's like, do I stop all this Discord and, like, prep for volcano? But I don't know enough to even prep, because I don't think it's about that. I think it's a slow, progressional, like, reset. And if there's that, you know, cataclysmic, you know, just a huge explosive stratovolcano that erupts, that happens. But the people that will be able to survive will be the people in the know. And I think that will be the people that have been brought to the Discord, or to a network where they're awake, because when it hits the mainstream, it'll be like, you need to go get water. You need to go get food. It's going to be a year until the sun comes back. It's going to be 10 years until the sun comes back. And that's just the science of volcanoes, like self-preservation, because it's too hot. They need to save Earth. They need to save themselves. They need to block out the sun, which, just a quick segue, we demonize our geoengineers, and they've been trying to, I think, buy us time. And so I think now they've even eased up, because the volcanoes are at the point where they're trying to buy their own time, and it's going to, whatever. It's very interesting how it works. But so, and even NASA now, I have an appreciation for, because I've found they're real images that aren't photoshopped or that aren't digital. You can actually go and find all their Earth data.
Jason Project.
And it's like, it goes to, and they're with the Smithsonian. So my buddies over at the Smithsonian, who I was linking to all that stuff with the origins of Freemasonry and whatnot, is fascinating, because they're giving data. And then you have all these, you know, so people are tracking this. It's just, and I would say Forbes is doing the most probably reporting on, like, hints here and there. And there's a couple, you know, magazines in the UK or newspapers.
Swiss publications, I've seen some Swiss ever since you pointed out that, I forget what the first thing you showed me, some journal, that Raytheon was associated with this company that was doing something in Switzerland. And Also, I mean, okay, so many things. Because when I was a kid, I used to do internship for NASA, and they were even in junior high, they took us to Moffett Field, and they said, we know less about the planet than we know about the planet, that we know about space. And I was like, now that I'm older and I understand that, how little anything exists that they talk about, it makes sense. They're actually like, yeah, you want to know the truth about the Earth, you should find out about the truth about the Earth. And they have this thing called the Jason Project and the Janus Project. And Janus is like the twin-headed thing. So the other mission that seems to be the real one seems to be the study of the Earth. And so much of what they do.
It's space.
Yeah,
they call it space.
They call it
outer space. They don't use
Inner.
outer space very often. They don't even say inner. They do that when they're describing like crust, like or anything. But if it's on the Earth, like a volcano, that's space science because they're studying spaces. If they're in the ocean, that too is space because it's a space of water. You know what I mean? It's like the blanket term of space, and NASA is not outer space.
You have to be raised by a lawyer if you want to understand these kinds of lies. Truth. Yeah.
So, or just start to pick up on like, what they're doing. Even when I was noticing the people bouncing around volcanoes, they're wearing spacesuits. I was like, what the flip? They're using them. That's good, or in the water and the different types of machines they have. I watched a video on
are those pressure suits that they used to get sponges with, basically, right? Yeah, they're just newer versions of the old pressure or sponge acquisition suits.
And then Nathan was talking about some tape, like just they wouldn't let them, I can't even just get patented their tape that could withstand all this certain amount of, I don't even know the temperature, but, and now they have it. And so they have like a tape that can help you go into volcanoes and walk around, and pretty crazy. So
I remember also in Chile a few years ago, I think the first interest who doesn't love volcanoes? I'll admit my first project was the baking soda volcano, but I used a bunch of different colored food coloring, so it was a psychedelic.
I made it way cool. So it's like, no, they have rainbow volcanoes, so that happens when the gas is from, and it can explain some of the sky anomalies from that we're told, or it's anomalous and something.
Well, but in
space,
well, in 2012, 2014, I think it was, when I went, the second to last time I was in Chile, a couple times ago, when I was down there, all the volcanoes were going off. And I think 13 or 14 volcanoes went off that I saw go off. And the first volcano, I climbed up it because it was a tourist experience. That you climb a volcano and then you ride down Pucón in Villarrica in Chile. You ride down in a little bucket seat down the side of the mountain. And the thing was that it was smoking. And I was thinking, this is crazy. Is this safe? And they said, oh, of course it's safe. It hasn't gone off in 20 years. It hasn't gone off since the 70s. Somebody said something like that. But when we got to the top of the volcano, about 100, maybe 60 people in red jackets that look like NASA kind of people, or military personnel, or Raytheon people, paramilitary, that are all, scientists and probably students that were just smart enough or just educated enough not to ask more questions than to do research. But they were doing their investigation of the data about this thing. And I could tell it was, something was serious, right? Like, obviously, like there's either you're an empath or you're obvious, but there's something going on. So I get down to the base of this thing, and this is the other weird thing. I usually would stay in like a hostel, but we're like, this is so great. The weather's so nice. Let's get a tent and let's sleep in the woods. Well, the volcano went off. And luckily we were just happened to be out of the area by an hour, 4 hours, something like that. And it came down and it completely, like lava rocks hit the area where we would have been sleeping. And they have machines with sirens in order to tell people, oh, it's coming. But, so luckily we had just gotten done climbing the thing and going down the thing, and then it started going off. And I thought, man, this is crazy. Oh my gosh, I saw a volcano go off. That's got to be a once in a lifetime thing. 13 volcanoes later, I'm tired of it. And the weirdest thing is also after that, I was trying to work with I was doing these mining conventions, trying to do nanotechnology graphene, because nanotech was trying to make graphene for these mining companies in Chile, because Chile is the biggest mining. Australia is technically bigger, but they get their work done from people from Chile. And so I was trying to sell, graphene technology to mining companies like Grupo Luxich. And we found out a lot because we got these educational surveys, which cost like $200 to get like a giant survey this thick, all about the mining research that they're doing in, Chile. And what did we find? Like, they're doing all the lithium that they can get from the salt flats, all of the carbon that they can get for graphite they're getting down the south. All of this stuff is happening at an exponential rate. And so if you remember Alaska, they were worried about oil drilling because of liquefaction. That was like the first time I think anyone really talked about liquefaction in public, was they were worried about liquefaction in Alaska. Well, Australia, and Alaska both have been known for having volcanoes, gold, and earthquakes. But Chile, it takes the cake. It is just nothing but volcanoes exploding all the time and earthquakes all the time. It's like literally a drink there, it's called the earthquake. But I mean, so yeah, when she started talking about volcanoes, I was like, okay, well, we need to look into it. But you're like, no. I looked into it. Check it out.
But first of all, so you heard that like rocks were falling, or like you saw, like you were like.
Oh no, we were lucky that we had just gotten out of the area just in time. We went to a hot springs place. I mean, I heard the volcano go off, but I didn't see them land in the park. It was loud. Yeah, it was totally loud. And also you hear sirens for 20 miles around because they have an infrastructure system. Chile has an infrastructure system because they're not only a mining country, but they're also an earthquake country. They're very used to having earthquakes. They've been mining for hundreds of years. If you remember the Phoenix, 33 men held underground because of a mining accident. Chile is notorious for mining accidents, and for the history of both.
That's funny.
But they're also known for the most volcanoes to go off in sequence ever. Most places will have one, and then the other side will not. This is just boom, boom, boom. I remember one time I was driving from Argentina. We had to pay a taxi cab driver once because I was with a couple of kids in Argentina, and we were like, look, there's fire coming here. We can't go west. We can't go north. We can only go we can't go east. We can't go north. We can only go west. We have to go into Chile. We'll pay you to drive us across the border. And we got right up to the border, and then we had to like cross into Chile from the border while fire was coming the other direction. I mean, it got crazy. And this is all 2014 to 15, which is nonstop volcanoes, and fires, and it was literally, as far as I can tell, an anomaly or related to the fact that there was a huge increase in mining. And so when you brought that up, I thought that was...
So, a few things. We don't typically, like if you're thinking about like caves or if you're thinking about mines, you're not thinking like volcano, like typically. You're thinking of, your mind just goes there. Even like I've watched Ring of Fire, and they take this, this elevator, I don't know what you want to call it. It's not really that, way down deep to the depths of wherever the mines are. And then you think to like the Midwest and how we're mining here, and we're mining, or, it's like, then you look and you find all the volcanic history that I didn't know about in the North Shore, like at all. I found out that so I thought it was the 2-year war, but I guess it's like the 50-year war. I don't know for sure. And it was of the Great Lakes. And I'm like, what, like Erie? Why are they fighting for this area? Because it's all where the minerals are and where they're going to try and drill. And and that's what they've done. But it's fascinating because there's also like stories of the most explosive types of volcanoes in that area that I didn't know about. And then all the way like down to this, even like southern Minnesota, if I want to say that. But and so you have these waterfalls, and waterfalls are linked to what happens to with the mechanisms of eruption. And so if you have a waterfall, there's been a volcano most likely, because that's the science of, I think, waterfalls when I was looking into them.
Wow, really?
So then you find that there was volcanoes everywhere, and that the mountain, so like Eagle Mountain, we have 2 of them, and one is like a shill, or it's just like a ringer. I don't know. It's to throw you off because it's in this great tourist area. And then we have like Eagle Mountain, which is owned by the Rockefellers in that 6 million. No, I shouldn't say them. Originally invested upon by, and it's in that 6 million acres that they own. And it was like, so that was a volcano that they bought that's now labeled a mountain, but there's no mountains here, so it must be a hill. But it's on, and then every state has their own mountain listed, which is really weird. So it's like, okay, so why aren't we studying this in our classes about like Minnesota, and why we're mining? Why is this a mining state or a mining area? Well, volcanoes existed, and
there are a lot of waterfalls in Minnesota. Or
there's some in like our major city, Minnehaha Falls. There's Minneopa Falls in southern Minnesota. There's Gooseberry Falls in northern. There's Taylor's Falls, which goes in Wisconsin. So yeah, there's a lot of falls, and I'm like starting to think and you're looking at that, then it's like
even Niagara Falls, Victoria Falls. Look at Iguazu Falls in Argentina, Paraguay is the biggest waterfalls in the world. It powers 60-70% of all South American continent is powered by one waterfall. And I mean, there's just volcanoes everywhere around waterfalls. I never thought of that.
This is what's so fascinating, because you've been to all these places and you've actually seen volcanoes, right? And like these things aren't linked for us because they're so compartmentalized that you have to it's like reverse studying. And I was talking about my like reverse engineering, but my the class that I had Gestalt that stopped me from being able to finish the class. And it was such a valuable class because it was called The History of Psychological Systems, and the first class was about the origin. You have to start at the source. And so that taught me just I'm getting my PhD in psychology, to look at autobiographies of these psychologists, not the journal articles about their work, because that's like they take the worst, most minimized parts of their theories, and that's what we follow. So it's like I started doing that with these brilliant psychologists and found like, oh my gosh, these methods that they were using to diagnose mental illness were way more discriminative and linked. Even if you look at the Rorschach methods, and they took 12 of them, but there was all these images, and doing that to help diagnose and then also treat versus the DSM, which is based on symptoms that everybody has at some point in their life. So looking at the origin, when I'm talking like psychology versus like volcanoes, and looking at land structures after I had studied what happens after an eruption, and you're like, well, that looks like it could cause waterfalls. That looks like it could cause these pillars. That looks like that is coral. I mean, that's coral. And then I watched somebody create coral in their pool by dumping in magma, or they had heated up some rock, and it was like, whoa. So then I started looking into the files on it, and it's like, as a result, waterfalls are formed after eruptions. So I'm like, how many? And is it all? Because I can't find solid data on the other formations of waterfalls. And we're talking about how our rivers are formed, and down to the Grand Canyon, instead of like this crater theory, they have already a theory of what happened, on Jupiter that produced the same thing. I mean, so if you want to study the science of other planets, even auroras. I found something last night that was showing the auroras on other planets caused by volcanoes. I was like, well, that's interesting, because I was thinking perhaps our auroras were caused by gases of continuous volcanoes that are constantly emitting different types of gas that would create a rainbow style anomaly in the sky. And lo and behold, I guess it's happening on other planets in their atmospheres, but it's not even discussed as something here on Earth. So
it's great. I mean, even Chico, California, near Yolo, University of Davis, there's a volcano, and there's a number of river and lake paths with giant melted pieces. They say are there from explosions out of the volcano that left these, boulders the size of Mount Rushmore. There's these huge rock, and they impacted. And you're like, oh, is this supposed to be a meteor? Or like, no, we won't even pretend. It's just a volcano landed here and made these impacts of magma. There are these pools everywhere, So,
Well, and then I was going to talk when you were saying before your experience with volcanoes, and there's rocks falling from them being erupted, there's one type of eruption that is like just which one is it? I can't. There's so many different types, but that would look like the night the stars fell. So that would look, some of these and other anomalies that we're finding that are being shown with reset, mud flood, whatever. It's like that sky anomaly is what happens when this type of volcano erupts. They're the same look, but at the time, the people didn't know what it was, and it was like the stars were falling on people. Well, that's an impact of the sporadic, lava. It comes out almost just like that, and I don't, that's what got me thinking, like, well, what the heck? How much are these volcanoes like responsible for with what we're being told? We don't know, and then can we track it? And it was like, they're responsible for a lot, and yes, you can track it, thanks to, I guess, NASA, the Smithsonian, to give them props. And the other thing to remember is this, again, is to calm people's like fears. I used to listen to Dane Wigington about geoengineering for just early on, and nothing against him. They're doing great research and getting data on aluminum and saying there's something different. There's, this is happening. Perhaps some of that is increased volcanic activity, which is creating a lot of our clouds. Wherever you are, if you don't have a volcano in your state that's active, you have clouds that are coming from other volcanoes that are constantly erupting. This is one website that's been pretty good, Volcano Discovery, but so this is just the active volcanoes. How do so
this is volcanoes and earthquakes.com. I have their app, and I like their app a lot.
Sweet. So this just shows you, like, right now what volcs are active. And if anybody wants to argue like that's not doing something to our sky, then they I don't think they know how much comes out of a volcano, how high it goes. I was trying to share an article the other day. Oh my gosh, I have so much stuff in here.
Oh, Jujuy just had one in Argentina. Oh, you wouldn't say. Gosh, that's incredible. So that makes sense. Right by Chile. And
this is like real time, and it has the I don't know if this has the.
Well, it's interesting how few of these are on the water. You're seeing most of them look like they're just documenting them on the land.
But no, this is what's funny, because I don't think this is not showing our cable array. The cable array volcs are submarine volcs. So that's not included in volcano eruptions, depending on what you're looking at. So this whole line down here is going to be the cable array that does exist. And sharks are not attacking it, I don't think, to my knowledge. They might be. It depends on if it's got, I don't know. It's doing a lot to monitor the seismography, I believe, and just collect data. But those volcanoes, I want to say it was like 81% of the active volcanoes on Earth are submarine volcanoes. So now look at the ones that are on land here, minus like, I think maybe the yellow ones are going to be your coastal or submarine that they're saying. But that, if you go to the like Woods Hole, or I'll probably get to it somewhere on my big links page, but you can see the cable array and the measurements of which submarine volcanoes are active, because here it does not look like 80% of our activity is coming from, the submarine volcs. It looks like, the majority is coming from land volcs, like you said. So that's interesting. And if you look at all the places where there are not volcanoes right now, like, that are active, at one time they were probably active, and these ones were not active. You know what I mean? And I think that is going to have to do with the grand solar minimum and what we're finding with that, because I thought that was linked. I speculated, and I was sent an article, and sure enough, yeah, it's scientists have connected it to volcanic activity, even down to the grand solar minimum, and it's like interesting. But that's also, and that's like from the seismographical seismography and the magnetic components, and it's also indicative of, in history, if you look at I can stop sharing my screen here so that I don't even know what's on it. If you look at the volcanoes erupting are in sync with your climate change, that it's going to be the year without a summer. And so that's really neat because it's connected in more than one way to what we're seeing with climate history. It's
right. Every time we have a reset, they talk about volcanoes.
And,
I mean, you look at the Neanderthals being wiped out by volcanoes. You look at Campy Fiagri, right? But also,
and it's not like it's not like though, and in some, yes, obviously this pyroclastic flow that can go 35 miles high, the gases, and contain solids and contain gases that probably have combustion effects because you're getting to supercritical temperatures, which that's a whole nother science, but especially in the water. But then it's covering and flying everywhere, and how far it goes. So that's 5 times the height that you fly in a jet. So imagine a volcano shooting something 5 times the height, and then how far that's traveling from that blast. So that gets you kind of thinking about just like the whole meteorite stuff again, but also like, whoa, that's a really high, that's really powerful. How often is this happening, you know? And while that might not, it will kill you, it's going to wipe people out, and it's going to turn, I think, elephants into stone and to make instant fossils. I think that's like...
Yeah, take your pick of the things we've been talking about. This explains it all.
Well, and... why is that flipped? Hold on. This is going to trip me out.
Well, really quickly, I wanted to also push this thing because you posted this, the one from 2000, April 2000.
Oh, yeah,
from NASA.com. And I felt like I had to show this because it was just too good. Plague and Volcanoes, a science brief from NASA, National Aeronautics and Space Administration, the Goddard Institute for Space Studies. Plague! Exclamation point. The word conjures up kaleidoscopic images of medieval pestilence and modern media hype. As a specific disease, however, its meaning is now confined to the infectious and often fatal illness caused by the bacterium Pastura pestis. Common carriers of the true plague are rats and human fleas, and the human louse. Louis Pasteur in the 19th century suggested that the clinical agent of plague, whatever it was, might lie very low until suddenly reactivated by a sudden change in climate. As early as the 16th century, the poet Thomas Nash, in the midst of the British plague, lamented, "From winter, plague and pestilence, good Lord, deliver us." In fact, it is now recognized that wet, chilly weather stimulates the reproduction of the deadly bacterium that causes the bubonic and pneumonic plague. Yet, the origin of the historical cycles of the plague has remained obscure. By statistically examining the occurrences of widespread plague that have been recorded throughout Western history, a curious coincidence emerges. A large number of these pandemics occurred shortly after a volcano underwent a huge eruption, according to GISS scientist Richard Stothers. Volcanoes have been known to spew sulfurous gases into the stratosphere when the sulfur combines with water vapors to form sulfuric acid aerosols. These aerosols screen out some of the radiation coming from the sun and so cool off the Earth's surface. They also change the circulation patterns of the atmosphere, such that the northern jet stream moves farther south, bringing cold polar air down into the mid-altitudes where Europe and the Middle East lie. These areas are the main reported regions throughout most of Western history. In other words, a lot of other things have disappeared because of this. Anyway, large volcanic eruptions, let me just close that. Large volcanic eruptions that took place in early times beyond the Mediterranean basin have been detected indirectly by the heavy fallout of stratospheric aerosols onto the polar ice caps. There are aerosols. Wow, this is a terrible grammatical sentence, isn't it? There the aerosols are incorporated into the year's snow accumulation, which later becomes compacted into the ice and, as such, remains preserved like a fossil. After drilling an ice core, scientists count the annual layers downwards to determine the age of the layers with an exceptionally high sulfur content. By this means, or by the direct visual reports of eruptions, we know that the 7 largest volcanic eruptions, or roughly the past 2 millennia, occurred in 44 BC, in 536 AD, 626, 934, 1258, 1783, and 1815. Whether you believe in flamenco or not, just remember these numbers because they're useful.
Yeah.
All of these eruptions were followed by the stratospheric dry fogs that dimmed the sun's light, chilled the atmosphere, and led to an increase in the amount of precipitation. In each case, many food crops failed and a fatal pandemic, originating from focus in Africa and Asia, spread throughout the Mediterranean area with 1 to 5 years after the eruption. It's believed that in at least 5 instances, the contagion responsible for the mass mortality was true plague. Not all plague pandemics, however, can be traced to large volcanic eruptions. This is not surprising since prolonged wet, chilly weather can arise from other natural causes. Although the Black Death of 1348 in Europe is a case in point, the major exception is practically unique. In any event, plague has still not been eradicated from the world, and we must bear in mind that volcanic eruptions have not been either. What I find interesting about this article from 1999, which has been published in April 2000, is that it essentially goes into detail without using the word about extremophiles. And it's replacing the word extremophile with the plague. But extremophiles, as I saw in Bolivia, there's the salt flats, in circumstances where everything else gets killed off, the few things that survive thrive. So that pretty well just defines what a plague is. It's the thing that survives best, and it's something that survives a volcano best because it can survive the heat, it can live in sulfur. And guess what we've found? Anytime we've found a volcano, you'd think there'd be just death everywhere. But you know what? No, the plague survives. There are some things strong enough that they thrive when everything else dies out. And you'll find more of them than ever because there's nothing else for it to compete with. So it's interesting. It really sort of sums it all up, doesn't it?
As regarding plagues, yes. I thought that was sweet. You're going to like this one. I think you might have seen this, but if you want to share my screen. So
going back now.
This is when Stellium was showing, or Mike was showing his
Did you just show me a fossilized bat? I just saw a flash.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
So this alkaline African lake turns animals to stone.
No way.
So this was something that I found interesting, and this is your Smithsonian magazine. And then it made me think just kind of the gargoyles and everything else. And I thought about if, say that happened to the exterior of an animal and you've evolved enough, you could technically be living and be like fossilized on your outsides. You know what? I don't know. I don't know that I believe that, but I know that when you see them and people are, hypothesizing they were actual animals, they're not sculpted, they're fossils. This starts to, make sense. And then you see things like this, and you're like, whoa, well, now they're showing fossilized animals.
If you inhale vaporous stone.
So, your lungs are gonna be done. I don't know. I don't think they're flying around then. That would be like magical.
They might, we've been talking about stone clouds. If you see this, it makes a lot of sense. Minerals.
But no, some of them are alive. Some of these are alive. Here's the thing.
Really?
So, yeah, you have to read this. It says that they've evolved. Hold on, I have to remember this now. They had placed some of the bodies back into the area.
Calcified. Go back. That was it right there. Calcified. Hold on. What was that? Or was it? But the bodies themselves are exactly the way the birds were found. He insists. All I do is position them on the branches.
Okay, to make them look alive. Okay.
Yeah.
So I thought it had said that there's still life in these lakes for.
Oh, absolutely. There's certainly life.
Certain animals.
That's partially the deal with extremophiles. It's funny because it's kind of like how in the New York City only certain kinds of people can survive. Well, in the jungle, the same. In sulfur, the same. Because all of the things that can't live there. The things that can do very well. So things that can live in sulfur are called extremophiles. They love extreme conditions. And they thrive when everything else is falling by the wayside. who's to say exactly what kinds of things those are? I mean, but the thing is, I think anyone who studied NASA science as a kid, like myself, will be easy to convince that this is happening, because all you have to talk about is sea urchins. We'll take, you tell us about sea stars and sea urchins.
Oh gosh,
we buy it. We'll buy it, because there are so many examples of phenomenal life forms in the sea. What gets to be crazy is when you start seeing non-marine animals that are able to thrive in these environments, because it seems like
that's where I just pulled up. That's funny. That I accidentally clicked on this because I wasn't going to even talk about this, but biologists always thought life required the sun's energy until they found an ecosystem that thrives in complete darkness. And so that's the what is the chemo system? They have a whole name. And you'll see these biologists always thought, and researchers were just proven wrong. These are all coming out now, and start to notice all these articles that are saying, like one of them was, kindergartners find ancient tombs that once were thought to be this old, or we were off by 525,000 years. And it's like, okay, at least they're trying, I guess. But what I also want to bring up, you brought up a good point when you're just reading off the whole plague thing in my reminder, I guess, climate change. So if you want to talk about climate change, global warming, whatever you want to talk about, there's also explained. And I actually am so pumped that we'll share it in this video. And I think this is kind of just an intro, and then all the evidence, I think, will come presented, or I can start. Before we continue, I'll show how many icons I've opened for this, but I have so many PDFs and just Gov docs on the stuff that it's going to be undeniable, I think, and in some areas. But climate change, there's a TED Talks on this. So the volcanologist guy, he's like climbing all these different volcanoes, he's explaining exactly what happens. And oh, this is good. Are you on? Are you on my screen? I wasn't going to go here, but I am going to now. So anyway, if we want to look at climate change, and we have this huge political divide about it, and it's creating, so nobody can talk about it because they've put politics into it, so it can't be discussed as a collective, which is brilliant. So when you attach politics, no one's going to discuss it, right? Unless they're with their like-minded groups. And so to do that to climate change is hilarious, because let's think about this. Let's compare. And so I watched all the videos saying that volcanoes didn't cause climate change unless perhaps they had increased in, the amount of eruptions over the last, I don't even know what he said, 1,000 years or something. Anyway, they have increased from what the data is showing. But I think that's still part of the natural cycle of them increasing until this point happens. And so then I found all the counter research from that man that had the video that said they weren't responsible. It's us, and wake up, humans, it's you. And I was being attacked by this person in a video for, I don't know, breathing or whatever I do that's causing climate change. And then I found the TED Talk, and then there was all these other articles on volcanoes and climate change as the determining factor, because that thing, the image I just showed with the maps of active volcanoes, I think in an episode maybe we'll get into the amount of the certain types of volcanoes that what they emit, how long they stay. I read one article about storms that are here that stem from an eruption, and it was a day, a minute, an hour, a year, 3 years, forever, storms that don't leave. And I was what does that mean? And I was I have to go revisit that before I can talk, confidently about it. But I was a storm that is just always like a lightning storm. And I was thinking about maybe they create, they create their own chamber for the cell of a storm, and the electric activity is such that it's continuous, almost like a nuclear powered storm within a container, like a plasma container. So I'm not going to get into my crazy notions here, but too deeply.
Well, I mean, come on. How aren't we allowed when it's Ben Franklin of all people?
Here we go. Here's the best. So I was thinking about, there's an I have to go to Discord and find it, or I share with you. But it's tech, and
you might as well go to Discord. It's good to example Discord for people. Exemplify our tartarynova.com, everyone. For those who were listening, tartarynova.com if you want to.
Oh, that's right. Oh my gosh, I thought you hadn't started recording yet.
Are you kidding me? What? You're always on record.
Okay, funny.
So,
okay.
This
anyway,
whole thing is too deep.
Okay, so funny. Okay. So, let's talk Ben Franklin, because I remember when we were talking about Edison and the cable array, or sorry, the telegraph, and kind of the different things with that. I'm looking now into the telegraph as being a part of the cable array too, because that measures the seamount, which is the ocean volcanoes, if you want to call them that. So, big name, thought, we're told, liar, whatever, all this stuff back and forth on who's discovering what and who's the person that's getting credit for discovering what we already knew. And so Ben Franklin obviously is now getting more smeared by the truth community because of everyone questioning his lightning rod experiment. And so then you just forget about him and think, once you get to be in the truth community, well, then it was like, maybe he's kind of like Edison. And so I was like, I don't even know why I wondered this, but I said, I wonder if he's ever looked into volcanoes and electricity. And so from there, it was like, wow, he has this whole theory and nobody really knows about it unless they've later assigned it to his existence. But then I found the tech, and it's on an ocean, and it's like a hydrothermal vent mechanism of taking energy, I think, from the natural vents in the ocean. And I was like, this is what I was envisioning with these star forts that are built, because if you have a submarine volcano that's producing stuff, it creates land. And so these submarine volcanoes are producing land. And like Hawaii is growing 45 acres annually, from what they say. I don't know if that's true. I might think it's more than that, but that's a Hawaiian island. So if you're talking about New Zealand and Australia, and they don't have any old buildings, and they have all these things that are kind of built to look like our older buildings or whatever. I mean, how old are they? And are these, because they have volcanoes that are islands, and then they have volcanoes that create continents and whatnot. And I'm like, what? So I just got into that research, thinking about, if they're producing land, and that they're going to produce land, a landform would start, and that would just essentially be like an energy field that you could use, or an energy mechanism. But I think they might also be able to send, if you can create currents, you could send this basaltic land eruption that is surfacing and almost direct land, I was thinking, because it doesn't come up cooled. I have to look more into it. But anyway, that was fascinating. And so then, this is Ben Franklin and his whole theory. And this is just one, because he's got another theory on,
And when did he write this? This is before Jules Verne, right? This is crazy.
1783.
Oh my gosh, this is totally before Jules Verne. I mean, Jules Verne's Center of the Earth is all about finding under Iceland a volcano that connects them to the energy system that Atlantis had. And what do? They ride a shield out on a volcano flow, which lands all of the members in different parts of the planet. And
do you know what, though? That's true, though. So volcanoes have these things that they call shields. They're called shields. And I just saw this 2 days ago, and I sent it to myself somewhere. But I was like, I wonder if this has anything to do with the symbology of shield and whatever else. But the fact that you just said that triggered that memory.
Wow, a volcano shield. A type of volcano usually composed entirely of fluid lava flows.
And that's a volcano shield, but there's also I don't know if it's a projectile that comes off. And I was like, okay, so now we have two names used, and they do this a lot with volcanoes. They'll use 2 or 3 terms to describe different features dependent upon a volcano. So let's say we're looking at shields. So you have a shield, that's a shield volcano, but I think on a different type of volcano, you could have a shield response on it, or a shield eruptive factor, or something like that. And that would be, I don't know, or maybe the shield is just a shield, and that's what they wrote off on. But
well, it's funny because it says the ancient Greek warrior's shield, its circular shape and gently sloped central raised area, is shape shared by many shield volcanoes. So that's their correlation. And that's the shield that is, to a T, what James Mason and his friends write out on in the film based on the book by Jules Verne, Journey to the Center of the Earth. It looks just like this. It's giant, and they flow out of a liquid tube because of the pressure. And first they find bread that's, completely edible or something. They find mushrooms, there are giant trees and everything else. They find things that can grow, giant mushroom trees that can grow without the sun, because they have a core center that allows the journey to the center of Earth. They have a sea under the land, and the sea has giant fish and giant squid and everything else. But there's also trees and flora and fauna.
Oh, you should go. We could get into the
let's
life under there. Well, I'm just saying the submarine life, the aquamarine life, I should say, and just I got so lost in
subterranean
thank you. The bioluminescence of these creatures is just insane, and how they react to just the slightest vibration or change in the frequencies of the water by anything, like a hand, a camera being brought to the bottom of the ocean, and they some of them are just continuously lit. Some other types of, I guess, illuminatives, and it's fascinating because they can be observed from overhead, but you can't find any images of that, which is, well, I have a couple, but it's like, that'd be cool to see from, up as high as possible, to see what it looked like, just for me. And right now I'm clicking on, this is, we could almost go into lava tubes and leave in the earth, but we won't do that yet. That can be for later. But those are so cool. Here's the
hydrothermal vents are formed by seawater that percolates through. Sorry, I missed that point. But
which one? Sorry, are you reading?
No, go ahead. I was excited. Well, once you showed me that crazy Black Sun website, was this a Creaire? Look at the center of the Creaire logo.
Oh, then I gotta go back to you.
Just the top of your page. Your page right there. I was reading your page, and it said Creaire.com, but in the center of the sea was a sort of
the one that I was on. Oh yeah. Yes.
Look at that beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's beautiful, whatever it is, to say it that way. Sorry, go ahead. Do you want to read this? Because this is
no, I don't. We don't need. There's a couple of these. I wanted to find the older ones, but this is hydrothermal vents are formed by seawater that percolates through fissures in the ocean crust in regions where the Earth's tectonic plates are spreading or colliding. The cold seawater is heated by hot magma and then emanates from vents to the seafloor. Water issuing from hydrothermal vents may reach temperatures of over 700 degrees Fahrenheit. The water does not boil because the extreme pressure at the ocean depths where the vents are located, and it's the supercritical fluid, is huge. Like the supercritical pressure factors, I do not know enough about it. Which I think I had studied just a little bit when I was looking into nuclear power and just general power, how power plants function.
Methane's extreme pressure has something to do with plasma production, right? In terms of I was always described plasma as the fourth state of matter as a kid.
Yes. Hold on, that's huge, because I think essentially with some of these types of volcanoes, that's exactly what's happening, and that would be. Then there's all this. These articles I have that I have sent to people that can maybe understand them better than me, about our plasmasphere and how that's created and how you need
power of up to 16
pillars. So then this just continues. So they have the sea sensors that do this. They have cable array, but this is when they were using them for power. So hold on. They're talking about the challenges. Turbo rank power systems, some events. So this is more wordy. I need to find the one that has, like, here we have, electricity generation from hydrothermal vents. What year is this? Maybe this is the actual.
Turn on math jacks. I've used that program. There's a commercial to use math jacks, which is a program you use actually do algorithmic curvature math, which you would actually use in terms of discovering flow entropy in terms of a rate of change. in terms of megawatts per hour or milliamp per hour.
That's cool. Well, and here then, and that would be helpful if you're trying to, I don't know, figure out the specifics. No, if you're trying to break down the specifics of what.
But yeah, for a first overview, electric generation from hydrothermal vents.
So here is the geothermal energy on the seabed. So now we're getting not only like electrical, they're trying to harvest, I think, electricity. The ORC, this is it. This is what I was trying to find. Sweet. Do you want to read this one? I don't know. My voice is annoying. Produces high temperature fluid through a hole which has a diameter and various range between several inches to tens of meters. So look at right there. Think about that. So a hydrothermal vent can range between several inches to tens of meters. And if you are like living in the times where you don't have what we have, or they already had it and it was already destroyed, or you're rebuilding, finding these things would be, I'm sure some would be easier than others if you have a giant gaping sea hole that's producing, and that's what the hydrothermal vent is. It's just where everything's going to come out of it. But that's crazy. That's
oh my gosh, I can't even believe they're putting so much data in front. It is known. Look at the data. These are my favorite new bumper sticker quotes. Look at this. Megawatts. What's this T? Quoting. What is MWT? What's
MWE? Oh,
MWE.
Thermal power up, 60 mega. I don't know.
What's that T? That's very interesting.
Let's look it up. And there's
thermal.
E.
Megawatts thermal.
Thermal, and then we have
thermal.
E, which would be what?
Megawatts. MWE is megawatts.
Energy, electrical. I don't know.
And megawatts electric. Okay, so here we go. Energy education. Can I do a real quick screen share? I'm sorry to take away.
Yeah, go for it. No.
I just saw this, so I thought it was worth knowing. Megawatts thermal are, and this is energyeducation.com. Is that what this is? I think it's energyeducation.ca. Got Canada. Thank you, the British government. Okay, so energy education, megawatts thermal. Most power plants are heat engines. Look at this hot source fuel, pressure's down, megawatts thermal, puts out waste power as heat, and then output powers megawatts energy. And then the same quoting is here. So we're able to see the amount of thermal pressure that's going down. The pressurized heat, which you were saying doesn't boil because it's compressed into a space, then puts out an amount of megawatts energy. So this is the equation, and we'll send a link to it at the end of this because it's a complicated math, but just know it exists. Okay.
All right. Sweetness. And then I click, this is the article I was trying to find. So just mining hydrothermal vents for renewable energy, drinking water, and valuable minerals. Well, that's what I was thinking too, myself. What a great idea. And so this is from 2009. And they have a great video where they talk about NASA trying to get a few $1 billion to go to Yellowstone and try and get the energy there, and they explain how complicated it would be with this system. Well, that's because it's gigantic, like volcanic system. It's like its own ecosystem of volcanic function, and I'm guessing maybe they could do it, but why don't we start with your basic run of the mill, or like a submarine volcano that's in the water, and we have different variables.
It probably did.
Well, they did exactly. So the article comes out with it would be very challenging, even with the $1 billion that they've been asked for. Or maybe it was even $1 million, and it was so funny almost, because they're talking about trying to reduce the pressure of what could be the next cataclysm that they're
oh my gosh, I can't believe we didn't bring up Yellowstone when we were talking about waterfalls to volcanoes.
Oh yeah.
And considering Canada just now in terms of the energy consumption rate of thermal energy from megawatts energy thermal, because Turtle Island, right, Canada is really just the British name for the government around the continent, which is Turtle Island. So this whole place, what's going to happen to it if this isn't done properly? You might lose it.
Well, I don't know. This is I think this is what they're already doing, and I think we have submarine volcano, I guess, activity on lakes, and I think there's definitely the mechanisms of the vents could be into rivers, and you have lava, these tubes that tiny tubes like I can't think of what they're not like the lava tubes that form in the earth. They look like plastic tubes coming from these, and I don't know if they get long enough, but this is just kind of the model of what the return pump, the thermal pump, and then electric power, and they're showing you what it would look like if you use a hydrothermal vent for power. And it looks like a lot of different things that we see, except for you'll see these coming up higher out of the water. And then I'm wondering, on the river, there's like natural flow, and that's going to create energy, but like, what are they really? Is there venting? Is there some type of, I'm not even saying it would be anything being leaked into there. It's just, there's a pressure system. And last night,
I read thermal enhancement pump as thermal enchantment pipe. So it's possible, it seems like the vibrations might be worth something. Sorry, you were saying last night.
No, I had Lee start to look into that, because there's a lot with like just different like the topography of everything is, not
topography and topometry. Topometry,
yes.
I just heard about recently. I didn't actually know about it. I heard topography, but topometry to measure the different quantities as opposed to qualities of the topographical map in terms of what productions.
And like geology is involved in that too, I think, or that's because I hadn't heard that's like a different study than geology. I don't know. I was looking because they were.
Yeah, no, I hate to be so jealous of the geologists, but yeah, geology. I have geology now.
Well, what is that? Isn't that just the actual? It's studying more the components of what's made up, like the minerals and whatever else, like what made up this part of this area. Similar to what you're saying, I think. But yeah, so this is just an example of, it doesn't look very complicated. I mean, hydrothermal power plant, do you see that? It's like,
right.
So if you're doing that with a type of submarine volcano, then so consider mining these hydrothermal vents. A hydrothermal vent, by definition, is a submarine volcano. Like that's the system of operation for it. There's not going to be just a hydrothermal vent just to have this vent. They're directly connected. And from my understanding, I guess I could be wrong, but that's what okay, so here we go. The energy potential is staggering in the gigawatt range per vent. So the Marshall Hydrothermal Recovery System would use the heat from hydrothermal vents 7,000 feet under the sea to make electricity. Its temperature is incredibly high. We already know all that. But this is another model from a long time ago, which makes me think, since we're finding all this stuff that we're learning about now, we already knew about way back, and perhaps some of the images we're seeing. And you had one really good one at the end of your Mercury video, and I tried to screenshot it and ask you, where was this? Because in the background, it looks like there's a volcano erupting on the back part of the image. And it was like, oh my gosh, it looks like there's a volcano actually erupting in this picture. And it was interesting. I'll have to try and find that maybe for the next talk. But yeah, so we definitely have things happening with using the energy of these. The cable array. I mean, there's a whole episode that should be done on just the science used for the engineering, I guess, of this, and how long it's been there, how long they've known where these are. Oh, this was what I threw out there, the 60 Years' War. So, number of wars over several generations. This is like the battle for Lake Erie, or Ely, sorry. It's just, what is this? We've heard about it. I just never, it was always in the South, I thought.
Yeah, the 60 Years' War is the most, there's two wars that blow my mind, the 60-year war and the 80-year war. I can't even believe that they hide this one.
Well, then they say it's a 2-year war. They say it's 1812 to 1814 in my Nat Geo docs. Because I have a bunch of Nat Geo magazines, and I was like, what the hell? I had a map of where the war was, and I'm like, well, why the flip are they in like the North Shore? And then I read a little blurb, and it said it was the map of the Great Lakes, or it was the War of the Great Lakes. And I was like, what? Because I was just looking at my Great Lakes maps from Nat Geo that I have saved, and I was like, what? I had never like thought of that. And then it was the 2-Year War was part of the 60 Years War, and I was like, what? But they're really fighting for, I think, valuable Battle of Lake Erie.
The battle for the
like,
lake.
really, I was like, so military history of the Upper Great Lakes. That's a thing, and it's like 1812, and they're not the battle for the lakes is the battle for what's like in them and getting like the iron ore.
It's funny in what's his name? Gosh, in Orson in H.G. Wells' Time Machine book, he talks about the 60-year war, the 80-year war, the 100-year war, and they're wars that go on so long that no one can remember how they started or what they were about when they started, and who, and even they don't remember what they were like then, because they've gone through so much destruction that and horror and trauma and loss of their libraries and everything, that it's beyond anything that they could even remember that there was a civilization fighting another civilization for some reason or another. It just becomes territorial disputes of people that are pretty well savaged, right? There's nothing left but savagery. So, who's to say what it was like at the beginning of a war that lasted more than one lifetime,
And then, and to look back and see what the results were, and some of it's like such and such claimed the 45th parallel, and who got what land. I mean, it wasn't just about like land. Like we think land to live on, we're fighting for our land. It's like, no, they were like, whoever like the true players were, because it could all be just a whole, lie. It could have just been our corporations trying to fight for the valuable land.
And we seem to know that now with the Buffalo Bill stories about after the Trail of Tears, because we can tell when they've been moved from one place to another place, and then they find, they're saying, okay, well, they've been moved from this place and that place. They weren't even there to begin with. Well, actually, there's a lot of stories of them being from those places to begin with, and they had oil, and they had gold, and they had resources, and they had volcanoes, and they had hydrothermal vents. Seems like more and more around these lakes, we're finding all of it, all sort of like a ecosystem. There's sort of a geosystem that exists, a geosystem.
And that's what I think is coming and developing from these different types of volcanoes. And if you look at like bottleneck theory, which I didn't know, I thought I made that up because I was thinking, what if we all came from like a different volcano and we evolved from that or whatever, because life comes from volcanoes, and we're told, it takes so many years for anything to well, I don't know if we even told. I think we assume it takes so long because of what we're given on our time scale. And if that's not true, if it's a volcano, I think it was 11 years for a tree, or for grass, 20 years for a tree, 27 years for a rainforest to form after, like on a volcanic island that's created from a hydrothermal vent that comes up, and then you have a rainforest. And it's like, what? How did I miss this in my, my education that has happened so quickly? And then you look at trees, and our oldest tree is 5,000 years old or slightly older. I think it used to be 4,000.
They were going around killing all the oldest trees recently. It was crazy.
Okay,
in the last 10 years, they killed like ancient trees.
And so whatever our oldest trees were, that was like the biggest link to the last cataclysm. That was like, if it was entire cataclysm, like of the whole earth, because there would be survival. And if your trees have been here, that long, they haven't been chopped down, that would be a good indication of how long you've been here. So I'm wondering, I'm sure they did chop down very old trees, but also we look at the oldest one, it's about 5,000 years old. And now if you look at the years, like from if you say 4,500 years ago to 5,000 years ago, you will find it linked to so many things, including our geological grading scales and our Judaism, the calendar. They changed the last major mega eruption from being that 500,000 years ago to being 4,700 years ago. And so right in this time period of about 5,000 years ago, we have a lot of things suggesting that there is some type of major cataclysm
Yeah,
that I'm looking into.
what is the today, like, this is according to the Jewish calendar, I think it's 5,779 according to
Now,
the Jewish
and that's
calendar.
why I was wondering if that's flamencoed or not, because if we flamenco that, then we're back in the 47. You know what I mean? If that's where it gets confusing, because if when they're considering years ago, what are they looking at? Yeah, it's very convoluted with the different timelines that we've been given, and that's why I think when you talk to Naya, and I think Naya should close like this entire conversation, because that's kind of what she has, and she's going back to the one before before 5,000 years ago, which may be more accurate, and maybe they got rid of those types of trees and whatnot. But that's the timelines, and you start to notice the they're connected. And so I have like a whole page now saved on like what happened supposedly 5,000 years ago. And that's something that needs to be covered at some point too. This one you'll find interesting. This is the, because I have some thoughts on how the Grand Canyon was formed myself. But so the first sea star is known from hydrothermal vents. And there's a debate here, and the narrative is these animals migrate to a volcano, but really in all actuality, they're so different. They are, I think, created by or being produced as a result of things coming out of these eruptions, and they're like evolving from whatever is coming out of them, because they're different on each type. And you wouldn't, where do they come from at the bottom, you know? And so this would also explain where they're coming from, right? And to me anyway, but they're so cool. It's let's see, 2,400 meters depth of the seafloor. I mean, look at these. I don't know if you're seeing this, but there's some really cool critters that are just appearing.
Sea stars. That's what I'm saying. Like, as a kid, they're like, look, there are giant and there are tiny sea stars. Giant and tiny sea urchins.
Well, some of them are pink. Sorry, continue.
No. I'm just saying that this is their best disclosure, soft disclosure is this.
Well, and then they have the shrimp. There's the albino shrimp that exist on certain hydrothermal vents, and I don't know that they could have migrated from far away, and why, you know,
where would
they be coming from? Where would they be coming from? They would be like from a different hydrothermal vent, or they wouldn't have lived without that vent. You know what I mean? They couldn't.
But they might be able to sneeze themselves from one place to another place. You know.
True.
Through hydrothermal vents.
But that's a whole nother topic. But I'm just wondering about the fact that the function of the hydrothermal vent seems to be what these creatures evolve in, but I also am wondering what if it's not where they're coming from. And
interesting.
And especially if you look at, you have these different things happening once you have like an island form and these species and everything else. And are they?
That's the thing about extremophiles.
From within, so.
Well, I mean, if they're extremophiles, which it seems like, so they're able to survive in places we can't, right? So what ends up happening then is it pushes out everything else that might eat them. Let's say, you know, you live in a Manhattan or you live in the rainforest and someone steals your hubcaps because there's just so much going on there. You know, if you're tied to a tree in the rainforest, there won't be a lot left of you in the morning. But if you're in a place where none of that exists because there's sulfuric gas and it's 1,400 degrees or 700 degrees, you wouldn't expect to find any of those kinds of, how would you say, normal, basic life forms there. So all you're going to find are the extreme ones. And these extreme ones, yeah, they seem to be, well, I wouldn't say they're exotic, let's say. Like, but they're very primal in shape. Like these stars, you have sea urchins, you have these, you know, they're designed to survive, and then they have the most powerful shape. That's why they make it. But they would be crowded out otherwise.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
That's what bottlenecking is, right? It's just like
yes, and that's why. Correct. And so that was a big part of what my theory was, and the beginning that wasn't included was my crazy theory that maybe life is coming. Since life comes from volcanoes, plant life, all these things are in the minerals, and what happens when like rain hits them, like me, I came. and evolved from at some point, that type of eruption. And so I was talking about that in the Discord chat when I was looking at like reflective star theory and stuff. And because there's been so many lies, and then I was like getting crazy, like, well, maybe Australia had their own volcanoes, and that's why they're different than me, and I came from this type of volcano, and I'm Scandinavian. I don't think it's like that necessarily, but I think that there's something to like the volcano as it's like the blood, the plasma. So you have both, all these things. There's like mercury. There's so many elements to just your magma, your heated, everything that's on the earth is in the magma. Like everything that comes out of that eruption in a different way is of the earth. Like for real, I am of the earth because everything that's in me is also like magma. We are magma. And that had me thinking like, whoa. And then I was saying that and my husband ripped out the South Park episode and showed me the LRH highlights of, and then they threw spirits in volcanoes. And I was like, I'm not saying that necessarily. I'm saying biologically, to me, this has some brevity because then it also, the soul doesn't necessarily have to come from that. Like there could be a life that comes from that. And then the secondary would be a soul element. And that's the whole.
Like this is not the first time someone's talked about this. L. Ron Hubbard, what did you say about
I didn't even know that, though. I didn't know that, and it's so funny given what you know about my history and inquiry.
This is what they believe about Xenu. Volcanoes and jet planes. Like this is all there.
I thought it was like well, and then I didn't know because that stinking Pog cartoon that like threw me right when all this was happening, and the Smashers or whatever, and I only got to see the first episode. Yes, I need to get the rest of those episodes because that was really interesting because of the things that were being erupted.
I think there's like 11 or 12 of them.
I'll have to just buy them, but I was like, well, that's weird.
If we can find those, oh my god, I haven't seen those since I was 7 years old. But that's the craziest thing. By the time that they bothered to like try to sell me on the whole Scientology thing, I was like, I seen this before. They did better with the cartoon.
And I know, and his name is Little Ronnie, which is just even.
Oh my gosh, he is Little Ronnie. Oh.
Yes, I know. That's why I wish I was freaking out during that because then I was reading the game called Man that I had just sitting here as I was like watching that thing you sent on volcanoes, and I had my Pog Smashers in my kitchen that I still had from 8th grade.
Whoa.
And I was like, what is going on? So it was just that was kind of synchronistic to me, especially with the.
I was like, bring this up, like for years I've heard that people talking about the volcanoes in Elron, and I was like, wait, this is just like that cartoon I saw. It took me years after that to know that they were even involved with Hollywood, right? Like I didn't even know that was a thing until I moved to Hollywood and saw weird people and nice gentlemen, women, ladies and gentlemen running around in blue jumpsuits around in circles. That's when they finally figured it out that they were like connected, but. I didn't know for a while that I could even talk about this. And then you had mentioned, that you'd even grown up with the same kind of culture and seen it. But they've been trying to hide it in plain sight. Like the whole idea of the volcanoes being the bottlenecking. And what do they do with them? Slammers. They're spirits. They're light spirits that are trapped in the slammers. And they're kinds of metal. They're different, rare kinds of metal. Most of the slammers, they might have had like a weird plastic one. But a lot of them were metal. They were a special kind of thing. They were like pewter or something to that effect. And we use them to hit these talismans, and the talismans represented iconographically the different sorts of spirits that were associated at the time with. These were the memes of our generation. These were the talismans, Lucky Charms. I remember getting some from, and tricks. You feel like tricks for kids.
Oh yeah.
So they set us up to understand the stuff,
Yeah. Well. It's interesting. And so I just got way focused on the biology of it for a couple of days. And then I was brought back. And after, maybe not on recording, but like, I do want you to see the woman at Woods Hole talk about what's coming right out of and on these vents that's crystallizing. Woods Hole, the Woods Hole hydrothermal vent. It's
like
a video.
WHITS, WIT,
no,
like John A.
No, Woods Hole. Woods Hole. WoodsOle.
Oh, WOODS. Woods Hole.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, Woods Hole. If you haven't looked around on the Woods Hole website or any of the naval stuff there, that's where they have the seafloor observatories, and they have a bunch of different seafloor observatories that run the cable array to measure our submarine volcanoes. I thought that was just the only one, but no, they're all over. And you'll see that there's a woman talking about the life forms that come from these vents. And she said something and it sounded like she said it came from it. And I was like, wait a minute, what if they're not migrating? So that's where my brain started to think, what if they're not migrating to? What if they're of or coming from? And that was really, just something I'd never considered. And it was interesting. And then I was even like looking into like orgone, and that being what would bring the soul to the physical being. So something of the earth, physical, created of the earth, and then the energy that is called, or whatever, our soul, or the ability of us to just talk and have this conversation, the magicalness, whatever you want to call it, that could be a secondary that's fused with a physical body that came from possibly a volcano. But I had no idea. That's just one of many types of things I've been thinking. Crazy, absurd, right? But I'm throwing it out there just because there's so many things that it's linked to, and I don't believe that at all, but I've postulated it. So I won't believe it until I would have enough data to believe it. And that's kind of how I got the name, I guess, books, because that's all I do is order things so I can have it and know for myself that it exists, and I can hold it and I can read it and I can see the people that signed it and what they contributed to it and what they're saying about it, and figure out if it's skewed statistics or if it's legitimate and whatnot. But I think just with moving forward with talking about volcanoes, they're so important because they could bridge some of the gaps we have politically too. And if you create that awareness about, like, even say climate change, let's say that people start to think, wait a minute, climate change could be happening from this natural phenomena that we didn't know about, of volcanoes, volcanic eruptions.
Climatic events. Let's hashtag climatic events.
And then you could like talk about, instead of like current events, you can talk about like climatic events on both sides of your political parties and be like, wow, we don't have to fight about this and argue about two things that are wrong, that we're being told by our media that aren't even accurate, because then you'll have, the conservative side of things say that it's not necessarily the human being, it's the, industry and our animals producing gas and whatever else. Okay. And that we're minimal. Okay. That's partially whatever, I think somewhat closer maybe. And then we'll have another media saying that stop, doing what you're doing. Don't drive your car. Don't do this. Don't do that, because they want to try and minimize it. And maybe the going over the TED Talks and a lot of the research, I don't know that it would matter. I think it's a good idea, because in your lower atmosphere, like, you don't want to create toxic breathing environments. I don't want to be breathing in diesel bus exhaust when I'm behind a diesel bus. I don't want to do that. I want people to have electric freaking vehicles, because that's what they should have, because anyway, I'm not going to go on a rant, but so like the pollution from that, like, I don't want to breathe that in directly. But if you're going to talk about something that's changing the climate, then you need to look at volcanoes or climate events, I should say, which are part of that. It's the trigger mechanism, I guess, of most things.
I mean, yeah, it seems like it's so much alchemy right there, because you have all the different kinds of minerals from all the different kinds of things.
Blood, plasma, and then
pressure, electrons. Yeah, radiation with electrons. So you're pushing pressure. This is better than a linear accelerator. It's just a very, very dense spot.
And so you've got a linear accelerator. If you start thinking that they're valuable, you start realizing perhaps that's why they're suppressed. Not necessarily.
It could be that they're hiding it because they're like making deals with each other. Like, are you quiet about yours, and we'll be quiet about ours, and we can turn lead into gold using this machine, basically, or something more interesting.
Well, yeah, they're talking about that already with diamonds and the pressures. Like, it's pretty interesting. Oregon State, I have another website up for anybody that would be interested in starting to learn about volcanoes. There's, I think, Washington, Oregon, Smithsonian, World Volcs, the IUGS and the global surveys, good. But this has like just really good links on any of these that you're going to go to in trying to grip this, because now there's like, sometimes they'll explain it as kind of 3 types of volcanoes. They'll explain like 6 types of volcanoes. And then it's like submarine volcanoes might be like a different type That's not included in the 6. Like there's 6 land types of volcanoes. And then you'll go into, from there, eruption types of each of those types of volcanoes. So it's so, it would be hard to find unless you know what you're looking for. But that's when I was trying to trace back all these like sky anomalies and the Carrington event, even that it was like, so the Carrington event, that's like a secret that you don't learn about in school. So when you're a truther and you learn about it, you learn about a sky anomaly, the Carrington event, and you're like, oh my gosh, crazy. And then you hear like Tesla, I don't know, it was Tesla or somebody was involved in some type of experiment, and this happened and that happened. And then you learn that there's a volcanic eruption at the same time as the Carrington event. And you're like, wait a minute, well, what are the mechanisms of that? And like what you were saying before, it's like shooting lava, red chunks in the sky. So it makes you think a little bit about sky anomalies. And that's, again, we're looking at the biblical things, and I think maybe you should do a whole episode on just that and linking, the everything pretty much down to your tsunamis are.
We could do an episode on volcanoes every day or every week, but we gotta do more episodes. You got to come back on. I was awesome. Come on, this is the best episode.
This is just the intro, but here, if you look at my sites, I don't know if you can see my whole page here, but I'm
seeing Volcano World at Oregon
State.
That one,
but so that one's a good one. God, they have VEI. So this is your volcanic explosivity. How do I say that? Explosivity. I feel like there should be like explosivity.
I trust you.
I should be explosivity, but I'm saying explosivity index. This is just the measure that they use to grade them. There's just so much. Here's the Royal Society range. I wanted to look. This is the best site right here. Your Woods Hole oceanographic. Hold on.
I guess it would make sense to say explosivity about a volcano, but you'd say the number of volcanoes that have had explosivity ranges from here to there.
Thank you for helping me with that.
I'm just trying my best to understand. I mean, these are new index data terms. These guys are acting like they've been doing this data forever.
Royal Society range is in East Antarctica. Did you know that? So it's cinder cones, 3,000 meters. So this is just one of them. So
what? So wait, 3,000 meters below sea level, above sea level?
I don't know for this one because I know Antarctica is huge. So they have 91, I think, active submarine volcanoes under Antarctica.
Yeah, that was the first I'd ever heard of that. By the way, they never mentioned the volcanoes. I know there's a mountain, but they're like, most of those are volcanoes.
They have a major land volcano, and that's what Bird found, and that's what all those original things were. And I don't want to talk about this because I'll get targeted, but Mercado Bay, they renamed because it was Ross Bay, and it was the nuclear power plant in Antarctica, or on Antarctica, that they set up.
Right.
And they relabeled, and they did all this stuff, and they have the log books that I have that I wanted to go through.
For those of you who think that they care so much about the environment in Antarctica, just remember.
Oh, they have a lot going on there. And they care about it because so we have these, obviously they're getting something, but also there's that very interesting theories about what our Earth is shaped like and ways in and out if we're like on a grander level of Earth. And that was really interesting looking into volcanoes in Antarctica, because if we were on some type of grander Earth and we were like a smaller one, crazy, right? Then you would be able to get in and out of through these lava tubes that are made naturally. I would think that would be one way, but I don't know that anyone would want to do that because who knows what's up. But so that's something that obviously I would never have thought about or considered. Looking more into the range, I just want to show some people what's out here. There's a global volcanism site for the Smithsonian. You can click on any of the current eruptions. They have it by day. This is not as up to date as the World Volcanic Monitoring Group, but this has some really good data on here we go, stratovolcanoes, shield volcanoes, calderas, craters, fissure vents, pyroclastic cones, and lava domes, just types and processes. This is all mud floods. So you got
volcanoes and humans in uneasy coexistence. This is amazing. Who writes this stuff?
It's hilarious. It's so good. So that's another. Those are some of my favorite go-to upper atmosphere research satellite. So all these upper atmosphere research satellites are pointed down, and they're monitoring volcanoes, which is really cool. A lot of them. This had some links to the what UARS mission was like. Why are these aerial things always linked to volcanism? So they're also measuring things in the air from it. This is NASA again. So NASA is everywhere. You'll find them in institutions. This is their Earth science.
This is the funny thing. People they don't get it. Like there is something useful they do, but it's not to do with what you think. But it's everything to do with what you're curious about, or you ought to be.
Fire, ice, and safer skies. NASA satellites track volcano. Oh, really? That's what you guys are doing? You're tracking volcanic activity? Oh.
Well, it says track volcanic clouds, right?
Oh, is it clouds? Okay, sorry.
I think so. So this is an I don't know. I could be wrong.
No, they are in the cumulo array. So that
so this is a big thing: is the clouds and the kinds of material and mineral gases that are happening in the vaporous clouds above these things, and it totally makes sense. So they're creating like a system that's aware of the different kinds of clouds, right?
Now, funny. Look at the resources down here. So then they're connected to our USGS hazards program and our Smithsonian Institution, which they're everywhere. That's how we found a lot of our old architectural, like some of the things for me were from the Smithsonian and their knowledge reports that were for the ones that were privy to their knowledge. So another good place to look for any type of, if you're just doing a search and put like for science history, whatever, Smithsonian knowledge reports, if you indicate that, you'll get to a different database than searching, I think, some of the mainstream. Near real-time satellite monitoring of global volcanism. So this is the MODIS. I'm not going to go here right now, but this is really, I kind of want to. Oh, they let me go. So NASA has a satellite monitoring system of the actual activity, and it's like the thermal, but it's coded. So again, you'll see it written as ModVolc in magazines, and it won't say NASA, and it won't be affiliated until you know that NASA is affiliated with the University of Hawaii, which I think, down here. So
absolutely. And you know who else is? Brigham Young University. You know, there's a lot.
Well, and here's all the papers on it. So we should go over these papers because guess what? They're going to have a lot of information as well. So here we go. Operates 5 U.S. volcanoes. So the USGS only does the 5, I guess, volcano observatories, but we have our world observatories. So that's World Organization of Volcanism for anybody who's interested in looking into volcs and getting real-time stuff or more information. And I can link all these at the end. Here's the axis map. So this is cool. This is our, if it opens, come on. Ooh, an error. No. This basically shows that your volcanic activity is, as they're changing, that's changing how the Earth is quaking around them. The Earth quaking around them is not changing how they are. So the magma chamber and the heating and the crystals and all that is what's causing expansion in this fluid layer of magma we have all over Earth, and that makes shifts in our plates, and that makes, you know, in my opinion, but I think as researchers we will be able to look at my data and make our own deductions at some point.
Absolutely.
Here's Internal Association of Volcanology and Chemistry of Earth's Interior. So all these subgroups that you have to kind of go to each place to get the pieces.
Said volcanologist. I mean, you know, if I knew I could, you know, studying volcanoes is one thing, but being a volcanologist, I mean, hey, ladies,
I know,
that sounds good, doesn't it?
Well, I wanted to switch my field from psychology to volcanology, but I don't think anything will transfer.
I'm pretty sure it's the same thing. I'll argue on your behalf.
It's funny. But then I'm guessing you have to be like into like the smallest little categorized like area of volcanology. Like you'd be like a, a Stromboli volcanologist, because the title of volcanologist, I don't even know. That's got to be like 75 years of school, because if you want to understand, so like even just look at this page. So we have the magmatism, chemistry of volcanic gases, cities on volcanoes, collapse. Okay, so collapse calderas. If you look at collapses in ocean volcs, we'll just call them submarine volcanoes. I mean, that's landslides. Like they know it causes like almost like all the landslides that I can find can be linked to these events of these volcanoes caving in on themselves. And that's also like tsunamis, and can be caused by these giant pieces of a volcano falling on top of itself under, you know, the ocean. And so, or in the ocean, it's crazy, because that's when I had that little premonition. I was like, what if in the Bible, like, they knew there was a volcanic eruption and a tsunami, and they were able to, you know, cross safely, and then it wiped away all the Egyptians. So obviously I can't prove that, but it just made me think differently about biblical events, and that's what got me on the track of what I think eventually we'll do. One of the most important episodes on would be tracking all, you know, the plagues and the curse, every little thing. Even in the Bible, it doesn't say necessarily volcano, but I was doing research on that, and it's like, if you look at the timeline, it's crazy, because a lot of those things could be explained. So we have explosive volcanism, kimberlites. Let's see, large igneous provinces. There we go, large igneous provinces. I was like, what do they mean by provinces? What do they mean by, like, what have they already labeled as this? Are we living on places that, you know, we're all created by a volcano, like, is my, you know, and that's kind of where some of the research is taking me. Volcanic lakes. Okay. So yes, we have volcanic lakes. It's craziness. People don't think like that either. So you don't know they're in the ocean. You definitely don't think that they're in lakes. Let's see, halogen. What is this? Ooh, the halo experiments. These are cool. Yeah, we'll have to. We don't need to too much bombardment, but there's a lot. I don't know if there's any other, like.
I'm scared. I feel like the amount of information we're going to give out is just too much information for everyone else, because not that they won't understand it. It's actually worse than that. It's that other people might start presenting this information, and we've already, just by mentioning this stuff on targetnova.com and the Discord, have other people. I think Static's got a video. There's a bunch of people that are already starting to talk about this just because you've been whispering it. So it's cool that you're putting out this data, but I think we should tell people, do you want to learn about this? Come talk to us. Go look at it. FoundryNova.com.
If you want to get resources, I have them all linked on my volcano page now. So
I think also what I want to do is I want to start downloading. We need to start downloading all this stuff to the Foundry so that you have the dates that these were saved at. Because 1984ing it is likely to happen now that you brought this up. But I think we need to make sure that we're doing
May. I think like early May, and right whenever that observation deck vid went, and he said something about there's even an ocean volcano, and I was like, wait a minute,
there's even an ocean volcano.
And I was like, that's what's whole, but wait, there's more than one. What's going on?
That's
so then
your life story, huh? It's like, oh, you guys just found out something that I know a million versions of.
No.
I think you need. No, I'm serious. You need to come on the show again. We need to do this pretty much like once a week. We need to start going through volcanoes for a while. Like, this is crazy.
Well, we could, but I want to find Discord first, or you can find it and
you want me to look at the Discord? I
got it. Okay, I got it. I can, whatever. Or you're probably better at it.
No, this is cool. I like what you do. You've shown the world how you do it. You go to the Discord button. You've made a Discord.
Hold on. Now let's get out of our personal messages. I hope you're not on that computer. Hold on a second. How do I get to a different chat? All right. So I actually don't ever. I do this. Here's the really cool thing. I do this from my phone only. Like, because I'm never at my computer. I'm always on the go. And so let's go to my volcano page, or let's go to like Starfort page. Is there any epic pages where people?
So here's how I would do this if I were you. See to the left of Exertus where there's a unicorn. Click on the bismuth piece underneath it. Down. There you go. Exertus target.
Yeah, I did that.
Okay, click on that. These are all the pages. Oh, not safe for whom? I think that's what that W is, right?
I have to be 18 years old because of, when did that happen? Who's putting adult content on here?
I think that's just the Armory chat. Go to Tart here. Tart here is probably open to all people. Tart here is safe for whomever.
Yeah. Sometimes you get non-welcoming, just people going crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things happening all the time. We have the nuclear information now because of volcanoes and pressurized plasma. I mean, it seems like plasma is going to be. We're going to have to do a real study on the elemental qualities
Yes.
So yeah,
and
portrait
I have
icon. So in here we have
okay, let's look at here.
research. Go to research area or trading post. Trading post is cool because you've got all sorts of traded images from and information from everybody. But research, we have a whole
Where's
thing on
research?
volcanoes now, right here. The whole
Oh yeah,
category.
sorry. Yep, and Mudflood Architecturia, Tar Technologies. That's
We love our
oh
puns.
my gosh, that was great. But if you, I mean, look at this. So if you ever want to see, like, there's so many images that people are sharing of things, and let's say you've started. Oh, there we go. We started to look into this with
Right, Victor.
family or try to tell people things. This is where you can find like the actual.
God, you
data.
saw a satellite dish from the 1800s. I mean, it's just crazy what the pictures we'll find in old
And so
books.
if you have something you want to share with others that you have that you don't have anyone to share with, this is a really good place. And the best part is, so each of these will have like a radio chat that if you're on, you can just go sit in there and listen to music that through one of our bots. Or if you want to talk to somebody, you can talk to one of the admin about creating a night where you chat about it. We have one group, that the Clarifix group or whatever, it's already meeting.
Chroniclers is tomorrow, actually. We're doing a Chronicler episode now. Chronicler, we're going to do one with NY Sync and
cool.
Odin's son. I think you just did one with Lance yourself, actually, like last week.
I sat in and listened. It was, I didn't do anything. It was very interesting. It was mind-opening, actually, for me. Plasma Future, that's where I could find my Ben. And you can use an alias so that no one knows who you are. This is me.
Secretarian.
And then Daenerys Tartarian. Here we go. Wait, is this it? Hold on. This is the Ben Franklin thing. Hold on. Okay, so hold on. This is... Oh, I can't read what it says. Can it really rain animals? I must have been looking at something. But this was... this little... Whatever this is. It's like a hydraulic flume something to get to... Something for energy. And so this was shared. Oh, no, I lost it. Where'd it go? Here we go. Okay, how do I go back? I can't see any buttons here. How do I go? Okay, so these are all shared. And so the really cool thing is linking research to each other. This had a lot of the stuff on the sky anomalies, and it's from newspapers. So to find out like that there was an anomalous event on the such and such date on Wikipedia or through a scholarly article is different than sometimes what we're finding in a newspaper that actually documented the event. And so we have people that are finding old newspapers that are linking to, like, this was the when each of them saw Looking Glass, let's see, compass.
One of the weirdest
Rainbow volcanoes that's what I was talking about with you earlier. I found out about that.
Rainbow volcanoes. Okay.
Well, someone shared this and said, "Hey, just wait. Have you ever heard of rainbow volcanoes?" Harry Ball Zach sent that, and I was like, "What? Send it now!" And it was like human aurora, human halos, and I was like, So he sent me this, and then 1811 New Narrative Comet, the actual narrative in newspapers. Like, so it was like really cool because it was linking to that. When you're looking at that great comet, then you have this other anomalous event that happened that a newspaper told you about that wasn't necessarily linked to the comet, or it was a volcano, or you know what I mean? So like piecing together with everybody.
I imagine most people who saw a rainbow magma come out of a volcano aren't around to tell the tale anymore.
Well, and it's like, so the auroras mostly because it's the gas.
Oh, so, whoa. And look at your rainbow, the Aurora's Ark of the Covenant. Okay, yeah. I'm interested.
This was back in June, early June, I guess, that I got the rainbow stuff. But now is to be seen one of the most awful and magnificent sights that the eye of man ever believed. Let the reader picture to his glowing imagination a tremendous marine volcano. And it's, okay, so right there, marine volcano, you see that? The storyline here is that we didn't know about volcanoes until 1977. This is from 18. Yeah, so this right now says we did know about marine volcanoes. You just said we learned about them first in, I think, 1977 is one of the narratives. But they have the bathymetry data from like 1500s, I think, from people that were sailing. So anyways, so this was huge for me. Casting forth continuously immense bodies of sparkling fire, beautifully, what does that say? Vegetated? Wait, I don't know what the word is. I can't read that. Anyways, with every color of the rainbow, intermixed with rising columns of smoke At the same time, very large rocks seen ascending into an astonishing height till their force being spent, they return with increasing velocity to regain, as it were, to their to former watery stations. Okay, so now that's in water. Imagine that same type of event happening on land.
Variegation is the appearance. Seriously, this is incredible. Variegation is the appearance of different colored zones in the leaves and sometimes in the stems of plants. So variegation of volcano magma is almost a biological term.
That's a V and not W, right?
I mean, it looks like a W, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's both.
Okay, that's why. Okay, variegated. Okay, so yes, intermixed with the rising column smoke. Okay, astonishing height. So this can happen on in sea. This is a marine. Now listen to this. So it's called a marine volcano. We don't use that. We have subaqueous. We have submarine. But right now, marine volcano, you can't search it. So in the 1800s, they were tracking these as must be, marine volcanoes. And somewhere along the lines, they switched it to kind of wipe it. But this, I think, is why they're saying that other planets have volcanoes creating auroras, because this is pretty, I don't know. So anyways, let me finish this. To regain, as it were, their former watery station, then let them add the terrific thunderings of the greatest naval battle that was ever fought, and we will have a complete description of this awfully sublime spectacle. The last eruption lasted about 6 days. So that's not even necessarily long, but people think it erupts.
Just one god's working week.
So yeah, so it's like, think about this now on land, something erupting for 6 days, and now you hear the skies are raining with stars.
And there's a new land fabricated from the process with all the colors. Also, yeah. I hated to interrupt, but I just saw when we were saying variegated versus wariegated, right? I was thinking about variance and bottlenecking of extremophiles through war or through variance. And maybe there is some connection between the idea of war and variance. But just a thought. After I saw the word battle, I had to say it.
That is interesting. Very much so. So, yeah. So anyway, that's supposed cemented together by a lava. So when it subsided, the smoke disappeared. A small island. So 6 days, and we have a small island in that place. Okay? 6 days. And you have an island. And to me, we had an article that just came out that said 6 months to produce an island. We have new islands forming.
That's literally what Genesis said. It's funny when science starts to catch up with the oldest book. But
yeah, that's why this has been even more fascinating for me, because it's like.
Also, I was just talking to Jeff, and Jeff, the guy from France who came seeing the Notre Dame footage and everything. He's like, "What are you doing tonight?" And I'm like, "I'm shooting a video with Secretariat all about the volcanoes," and he said this. It was like so epiphanic. So epiphanic. He said, "You can't spell lavender without lava." And I thought, okay, well, I don't know what to do with that yet, but it sounds good. But I think that's where we get it.
If we start
biology
to look at
geology,
I would say for sure. And if you start to look at the eruptive sites, and you see beautiful, like pink, bright flowers. You see orchids. You see all these beautiful
orchids, right?
Things that are coming right from right after.
Isn't it funny that orchids are so hard to take care of, considering they come from volcanoes? Like, what?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. So I guess back to Discord. This is the kind of stuff that gets shared. So here we have like a really old picture. An old image of Vesuvius. It's so cool. And it looks like it has 3 plumes on it. And so like there's different, or 3, I don't know, vent tunnels.
And there's some interesting stuff about Vesuvius and 5, the idea of V related to like the 5th volcano and the 5th explosion. Same with Spy Kings, like the 6th era.
Wowie.
I mean, the information we're going... Sorry.
I think having Nathan on will be really helpful, because when we're talking, like if we get to like a pyroclastic flow, he will be able to break down
he's really great.
And what it causes, because like what the reaction, what happens, and what is the result.
Amoro in the Discord. If you know, Amoro is one of the most important people I know. He's a beautiful human being. He's also really useful for keeping on consistency. I think that's one of the things about this is an explosive disclosure of information. But I think it's going to take many episodes to go through, even just what we talked
connecting
about.
the science, and that's what he can connect all of that. But he also does this with every topic, so it's like I don't know how he can keep all of that knowledge together, but he's definitely the person I'm going to and asking questions and sending whatever I find.
His understanding of orgonite has really, I think, helped also. In terms of understanding orgonite, like that's something I think we haven't even touched upon yet, but it plays really deeply into this in terms of consciousness and energy and plasma. And I think the other thing is just I don't want to even push until we've actually done some talk about what plasma is, or whatever theories there are on it. Because by the way, not everyone's sure. But the biggest one being, of course, it's like another state of all the elements existing. So it's this it changes everything when we start looking into ionic breeze. But yeah, I'm glad you're showing the Discord, because I don't think everyone understands how much is happening.
Where's the star fort? Like Victor's got crazy.
We have an entire category of categories called the star fort categories.
Whenever Victor, he was like going crazy, dropping those old. I wonder if they still have the. Oh, here we go. Oh, people are into like the look. Oh my gosh, I haven't seen this one. See, and you come back in here, and there's just always just. Oh, I want to find some of those really.
I mean, if you like sick memes, also about Tartaria, Mudflood, and star forts, I think we're number one.
We're gonna go to, and I have this picture in my house right now, I think. But are you on mine to show some of these star forts?
Oh yeah, I'm just watching right now.
It's like. They get flashed in videos, but here you go. You can go see for yourself. You can show other people.
You can vote for which star fort you want to be made into the next Tartaria Nova T-shirt. I mean,
Can we really do that or not? Because I think.
Are you kidding me? Yes. You of all people can just demand it at this point. I think you've earned it.
I think we should do that. That's a great idea. I have a bunch of favorites saved, but I mean, this is just really. And then when you see some of this technology, it's so cool. And I think this works. So all the stuff that's been culminating on the Discord and through sharing with Victor, Mike, the whole group, everybody, Nathan, whatever, that has been involved in this, you obviously has made my brain different in how it looks at technology, even like some of the stuff that eventually I'd like to talk to you about on the perpetual motors. But I never would have... I don't even think seen volcanoes as energy forces unless I had been into the start fort. Just how is that working? And then they're rotating forts and they're doing this and that. And it's like my interest in that made me look at volcanoes as like a machine or like an engine or like a nuclear power plant in their own. And then all the other stuff, because there's stuff on spirituality and just incredible. Oh, you have so many bright people on each of these pages sharing just incredible things, but relating it to like biology.
And now we have Women's Night, which Ladies' Night is really useful because there's so many people that are just, they're used to us not shutting up and listening. So it's kind of nice to have you guys you ladies, know so much.
We have to get more. We had one little chat, and it was, for me, it was probably, again, one of the most positive things that's happened to me on the truth journey. There was another mom that had been there, Twilight Mist, okay? And just talking with her was just incredible. Having another person that's a female that has a child. I haven't got to do that with anybody about any of this stuff. So it was really, really it was powerful because we're all there to help each other. We're all there to get through this. We're all there to learn truth, and no one's there to fight or be rude. You don't have to deal with, there's been barely any type of issue. We keep it respectful, but there's also a lot of funny things happening. You can do direct messages. So if I wanted to send a message to somebody, I would just, go right over to here. And I'm already in a message with you, but you can search the person by, I'm the last person that should do it. You should probably do this, but you can search a conversation, you can search a person, so then you can link them to other pages and say, hey, at our own, Exodus, have you seen this on this page? And then it's like boom, 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 and it's all there. And you can screenshot from my phone. I send screenshots. Victor's like the pro of that. And the other person, Lost in Tartar Source, that just, people are going on like Facebook, and I don't know if you want me to show more. I'm not going to.
No, this is great. I appreciate that you're, I don't think any of us have really been able to show this from the side of someone who's using it properly. Because I've been trying to build it, I've been trying to make it work right. But like, it's cool seeing how somebody uses that thing, because it's more than just entertainment. It's actually research. This is a research machine. This is our machine for doing that, So it's cool that it's working. It makes me, this is probably the best. This is the best I've felt in a while. Just seeing this actually happening, and it helps people.
And you've been out doing like documentary work, but here there's been posts before where someone's like, I have a dream that my family, people I love, want to harm me, and guess what? We have people that, not that we're necessarily practicing psychologists, some people are, and so instead of going to the doctor, and we can maybe even get a help room like that on the Discord, people are counseling each other. And when you don't have anywhere to go because you don't really trust the system, if you do or don't, I mean, people still do, and that's great. I'm not saying I entirely don't trust the system, but it's nice to have a place to go where you can talk to other people that might be in that profession, and they will give you free advice, and it's like your choice to take it or not. And it's not, they're being genuine, and what they'll probably do is share the literature on it so you can find it yourself, or they'll have a story, or you'll feel better because you know that they had the same thing happen to them. But who are you going to talk to about this? Because if you go to leave questions in the comment section if you think that this is all hogwash and it's preposterous and I don't know what I'm talking about, you could be right. So please otherwise, join us. And are you gonna have a link for the Discord?
Yeah, tartarynova.com. You guys remember, go to tartarynova.com. You click on the little radio chat button and you're at the Discord. Also, it's in every single video now ever since I met Brittany, and she made sure that it was in every single video.
Right. Well, thank you. That was awesome.
Thank you so much. This is the craziest.
Sleep.
Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.
If you're interested in trying out the Foundry, just visit tartarynova.com